Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to picture ancient Puhar. Imagine thick, fragrant incense smoke drifting over these massive, grand merchant avenues. Now, we often look back at ancient festivals and just see them as, purely religious devotion. But today, we're decoding the Indra Vizha, and we're going to see it not just as a spiritual event, but as a highly calculated, mastermind geopolitical summit engineered by the Chola dynasty. I mean, we are talking about a breathtaking display of wealth, sheer military might, and absolute state control.
To really understand this masterclass in ancient statecraft, we're going to break it down into its strict five-phase structure. That's the proclamation, the flag hoisting, the grand processions, the state geopolitical summit, and finally, the sacred ablution. So, starting things off with phase one, the proclamation, where they prepared the entire city of Puhar. First, we really need to grasp the massive temporal scale of this whole operation. It kicked off on the full moon of Chittaide and lasted for a grueling 28 days. And the stakes? They were absolutely astronomical. The residents actually firmly believed that a mythological beast, the Bhutan, would literally swallow their city whole if they failed to complete the rites. The state masterfully leveraged that deep-seated fear to guarantee unwavering public compliance. And they initiated this event with sharp, unyielding military precision. You can just imagine looking down over the city as officials adorned the royal elephant with this brilliant golden girdle. Next, they mounted the sacred morasu, that's the highly auspicious drum of the state. And then, right from the Vajakotam temple, royal beaters would strike that drum, blasting the royal decree across the entire capital. The primary source texts actually document this logistics trail perfectly. The officials removed the auspicious drum from the Vajrakotam temple, secured it tightly on the adorned elephant, and conveyed it all the way to the young white elephant's temple. This incredibly precise movement was the ultimate visual signal. It meant the unalterable beginning of the festival was officially underway.
Moving right along to phase two, the flag hoisting, which involved erecting the massive Indra Vizha. Here's where the engineering gets wild. Officials hoisted this towering staff bearing the Iravatham, the white elephant symbol of Indra, high above the Kapaka tree temple. Down at its base, priests meticulously placed the Ashtamangalas, the 8 sacred auspicious items. And the exact second this monumental flag went up, military factions fiercely vied with each other to make the very first offering at the altar. It was literally a race to prove their loyalty to the crown. Listen to this invocation. May all evil to our mighty king be warded off. Enjoy seasonal rains and prosperity. You can hear the absolute executive authority in those words. Military forces were quite literally pledging their lives upon that sacrificial altar. These fierce, battle-hardened soldiers offered their own blood and flesh to the guardian deity, essentially demanding victory for their conquering monarch. The state expertly took this intense religious fervor and harnessed it to secure ultimate, unshakable military loyalty.
Next up is phase 3, the grand processions. This is all about the movement of deities, the military, and classical dance.
Just look at the sheer logistics of the fourfold army they deployed here. This is hard expenditure data proving massive state power. The Cholas mobilized exactly 100 chariots, 500 elephants, 10,000 horses, and 20,000 carts. Plus 1,000 Kanjugar marching alongside a massive entourage of dancers, musicians, and jesters. It is a highly coordinated, frankly staggering display of state resources. And you have to hand it to the Chola rulers. They possessed profound administrative genius. They processed multiple different deities together specifically to promote absolute ideological unity. We're talking about parading the unborn Shiva, the six-faced red Lord Murugan, Valiyan or Balarama marked by the white conch shell, the dark-colored Narayan or Vishnu, and of course Indra himself under his victorious umbrella. By weaving all these diverse cults into one single grand procession, the Chola state effectively neutralized any religious division across the land. You also see this intense cultural alignment being demanded by the state. The primary text describes the dancer Madhavi strictly placing her right foot forward perfectly according to ancient custom. She then executed exactly 11 precise circular movements, or mandulams, in flawless harmony with the lute, the flute, and the drum. The state controlled and perfected absolutely everything, down to the intricate footwork of its cultural ambassadors. That brings us to phase 4, the state geopolitical summit. We're talking fasting, feasting, and most importantly, funding. We can really define this phase as a mandatory suspension of commerce. Elite merchant guilds completely bankrolled this massive event. By halting their regular trade to fund these incredibly lavish rituals, these wealthy merchants effectively transformed spiritual devotion into a hardcore geopolitical summit. And this tight financial backing tightly unified the entire kingdom under Chola suzerainty.
The text actually specifically analyzes the abodes of the Yavanas, or foreigners, whose prosperity just never seemed to wane. Wealthy sailors from distant lands lived as one unified community in Puhar, right alongside these vast streets filled with fine silk, corals, sandal, and myrrh. This massive international economic engine is what drove the city. And the Chola state? They expertly tapped into this vast merchant wealth to fund their grand imperial display. During this time, the streets just overflowed with administrative dominance. The king's 5 great councils and 8 great retinues assembled in full public view. You had princes of the royal blood, powerful foreign merchants, and elite charioteers all gathered together. It was the Cholas manufacturing a totally undeniable physical display of unified state power.
So, the crucial takeaway here is that this festival solidified Chola rule and ensured economic stability through unified state worship. This 28-day cycle was not merely some cultural party. It practically guaranteed the economic and political stability of the entire empire by forcing all the major military, religious, and economic players into a single, highly visible alignment.
And finally, Phase 5, the sacred ablution, which brings everything to a grand conclusion at the Kaveri River. 1008. Just let that number sink in for a second. This exact count represents the massive scale of political submission taking place. 1008 subjugated kings and allied chiefs participated directly in the final ritual bathing ceremony of Indra. This wasn't just a bath. This was the ultimate, public headcount of imperial dominance.
The primary source record reveals the stark physical reality of this submission. These 1008 kings actively carried gold pots filled with cool, holy water from the Kaveri River, right on their own heads. It was a highly public, highly active demonstration of absolute submission to their Chola overlords. The sheer visual splendor of it all signaled absolute loyalty. Just picture these subjugated monarchs carrying water mixed with floating, fragrant pollen, held exclusively in pure golden pitchers. Now, while the ancient text claims this act delighted heaven and earth, structurally we know what it meant. It symbolized ultimate agricultural fertility, yes, but more importantly, ironclad, unquestionable political loyalty to the state.
Which brings us to a final, really vital question. Was the Indra Vizha primarily a heartfelt plea to the gods for rain, or was it a brilliantly executed masterclass in ancient economic and geopolitical control? When you review the mind-boggling military logistics, the strategic merchant funding, and the forced public submission of over 1,000 kings, we really have to reconsider these ancient festivals. They were highly calculated, heavily funded instruments of absolute state power. Definitely something to think about the next time you look at ancient history.